I don't think I've ever seen a time in my lifetime where the example of poor leadership is blowing up in its face right now, uh, whether it's politics, global leadership, or corporate America, or even at the community level. There's a bunch, I see it at the community level of how leadership is not paying attention to what it is that they're leading in the sense of the well-being of their employees or their staff. They're more interested about their own survival, or whether or not their ideas are going to be crushed or taken away or not being valued. And so they end up squeezing and holding on to that leadership position to the point where it just suffocates the rest of the company or the organization or the community. You know what I mean? Like that type of leadership, which has been prevalent, I feel like it's been prevalent for the past 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, especially like in this digital age, because it was about fucking getting that money, churning that money out, making the big dough.
Well, the thing about it, what's AI going to do?
Well, AI is going
to... People are just going to go to all the AI chat, GBT and Gemini and all that, and say, hey, how should I lead these people? Type it in, and it'll give you a list with basically no emotion, right? It's just, here's a list of how to operate, how to lead people, and then good luck.
Yeah.
Right? And people will follow that. It's kind of like what's happening now, right? Because you have political leaders out there that red and blue, like you were talking about, Republican, Democrat, they only think one way, right? Some just think, especially on the Republican side, they're just one way now. It's like, this is the way, or you're done. I don't want to even talk to you.
Yeah. We'll threaten to kick you out as House Speaker.
Yeah. Right. Oh, well, it takes one person to do that now, right? So it's stupid. Yeah. It's like, really, no one wants to negotiate anymore. What happened to negotiation?
Yeah. What happened to governance?
Yeah. And even in the community level, I've seen that fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's my way or the highway. And it's like, well, no one's going to be happy. Well, it's not about being happy. It's about what I think.
Yeah.
And how it's supposed to be done. That's leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You do it my way. That's the narcissistic leadership way.
Yeah. Stop questioning my orders.
And then you get the gaslighting. I didn't say that. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's and it's and that's the evolution that you're talking about, like the leadership style, leadership is being challenged right now. How organizations, how communities, how politics, how companies, how global leadership is being done. I feel like it's being questioned. And that's why you see all these fucking wars and revolts and protests, and because everyone's just fucking tired of the shit. But which really puts more of the onus on the people who are protesting or unhappy. It's like, don't choose a lane just because you fit in that lane. You know what I mean? Like, really do the deeper thinking about what it is that you're protesting, or what it is that you're angry about, what it is that you're questioning. Because again, like, it's just even with the whole Palestinian and Jewish conflict right now, it's I feel like, at the end of the day, any of those people on either side, they just want to live and not be fucking worried about being attacked. Just like fucking just leave us alone. Leave me alone.
It was fine before all this shit happened.
I mean, it was.
I mean, the conflict's there, but have you seen the ruins of what's been happening in Gaza? It's ridiculous, dude. You only see that in apocalyptic movies.
Yeah, and, right? and And that's
The
a
end of
result.
days.
Yeah. And that's a result of like grouping a peoples into one category. They like the stance that Netanyahu is taking is that it's not Hamas that's the problem, it's the Palestinians that are the problem. And that's unfair because half of these, probably more than half of these Palestinians don't even know or care what the fuck is going on. They just want to be with their family and provide for their families. That's all they want to fucking do.
It's crazy, man.
They
I
could
mean, we
care
can we
less
can go
about.
we can go deep in this stuff, but all I want to know is how can we help leaders in our community? Let's start there first, because I think it starts from the beginning, right? Because if you
Right.
develop leaders early on, like elementary school, and then throughout high school, and then college, and then their jobs, they get their regular jobs. That's how you develop leaders. You know what I mean? I mean, but if you're in that position, you're a leader now in a as a community leader or an organized an organization that you're leading, whatever that may be. And is it okay to point that out? It's all politics too.
Is it is it okay?
To point out that they're not a good leader
Um, at the
at any organization, community organization. Like, how do you broach that without offending anybody and saying, "Hey, man, you might need some leadership training"?
no, I definitely. Well, I'll back it up by saying that. So the premise is for the tagline that we've been playing around with, that I feel like after a while is just really speaks to what, more concisely, to what it is that artistry in life is all about, is that we help people in our communities to become better leaders, right? That's that concisely, more effectively depict the intention behind what artistry in life is. So what does that mean? That means in our communities, we get to question the leadership. We get to exercise our own critical thinking on what we feel is better equipped leadership and what leadership looks like and how we can challenge the ways of being of these leaders. Because again, what is happening with old style leadership is starting to experience its breaking points. We talked earlier about how everything is based off of the core capitalism. It's swimming with the sharks. It's attaining business, the success of the business by any means necessary, at anybody's expense. If the stockholders are happy, that means me as the leader of that company is happy as well. But that leadership is not necessarily keeping in mind the well-being of the people that person is leading. If everything becomes at their expense, just as long as the top looks good. So part of what the intention is, because again, people at that upper echelon of leadership, from corporate all the way up to politics, they're more beholden to power and self-interest. So to even try to challenge those people up at that level is a long path to do. And there's a lot of resistance there. And in a lot of cases, you probably won't be successful in that. So I've always been of the, not always, but I've really started to hold more value in the concept of, if we want change, it has to come from the masses, right? It's very grassroots.
Yeah.
So if that's the route of um, if that's the route that we choose to help create that impact that we're looking for, then we get to look at the grassroots level in our communities and helping to develop those leaders so that they can start to infiltrate their way up to the top and upper echelons of business or politics or whatever. So to your point, yes, like we get to start providing different ways of leadership, different leadership styles, challenging old leadership, and providing not just challenging, but providing different opportunities and practices to become more effective leadership, more effective leaders. And I feel that an effective leader, there's obviously there's a bunch of different characteristics of what makes an effective leader, but I feel like what really is missing that can make leaders become better leaders is the emotional intelligence component. Like really being able to understand our emotions at a deeper level, and whatever deeper level that is, continue peeling back the layers to even dig deeper on what our emotions are, how these emotions affect our ways of being, how they affect our choices, how they affect our actions. And once we have a better understanding of our own emotional intelligence, inherently that emotional intelligence will be extended to people that they're leading. And they can start using those tools to exercise emotional intelligence in their mode of operation with organizations, companies, communities, and whatnot.
What is what does an organization look like without emotional intelligence? What does a leader look like without emotional intelligence?
What it can look like is self-serving behavior, narcissism, anger, frustration, leaking that out onto your subordinates or to the people that you're leading.
And we're even talking about just the community level.
Even at the community level. I've seen organizations where their board is so ineffective because they're more concerned about the organization as opposed to the people.
So they're more also they're probably more concerned about how they look to others.
Like that definitely can't.
They drive nice cars. They're successful. Just because they're in that role doesn't mean they're successful in that role, right?
Exactly.
Especially as a community leader.
Yeah. People will dress themselves up as this great fucking leader, but then when you start to peel back the layers, everybody's fucking just tired of the shit of just of cracking the whip on people and not creating that effective buy-in for people to be a part of this organization. They may think on paper, maybe like, oh yeah, this organization is something that has the same values that I have, but because there's poor leadership, that cause ends up experiencing a lot of resistance and resentment, and then the production value of the product that they're trying to put out is not as effective as it could be because the production value that was put into it was challenged because leadership was not exercising critical thinking, emotional intelligence. They were more operating from a place of survival and how it's going to look upon me, how it's going to reflect upon me, or how is this going to advance me, or how is this going to make my stockholders or people investing, how's it going to make them feel?
Sounds like the ego, dude. Sounds like the ego.
and that at the core of it is I would say 90% of the leaders that are out there are driven more so by ego than for the well-being of the actual people in the company.
Can you give me an example of a real life example of weak leadership in the community without throwing anybody under the bus? Just things you've seen in community leadership, and knowing that if they implemented the type of training that we're talking about, would actually help that organization.
Yeah, I mean, just even my own experience, I've seen people of organizations that were, again, just really more concerned about advancing themselves, and didn't communicate in an effective way where it inspired people to buy into their cause,
Jump on board.
jump
Feel
on
good
board.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, they would talk a big game. They
Hmm.
would tell you whatever they wanted you to hear to get you to buy in, and then when you buy in, then you realize the practices that they do behind closed doors, and then you're just like, "What? You're a fucking idiot, dude. You're pissing on everybody." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just even, uh, like I've worked just some gigs where even in catering, like I remember working for one guy. Now he's like, oh yeah, we have a really good reputation as a coffee cart. This is and I've worked with a couple of different coffee cart type of companies in my lifetime. But one of them was, they had their presentation of their coffee bar. It was really nice. I was really impressed because I was working at another gig and I saw these guys and I was like, see if I can pick up some work and start talking to the guy. And the guy was buttering me up. It's like, oh yeah, we provide all the equipment, all that stuff. This is what our pay is. It's pretty competitive, and and uh, and these are the hours and whatnot. So in other words, he just painted it to be like, oh, this is a good
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And then when I started working with him, I started to see the actual runnings of the business. And this guy was like, he was saying, well, to pick up stuff outside of service hours or working hours to get to the gig, and then I would have to bring that back um, to
The warehouse.
the warehouse,
Yeah.
and it was so much more work that, like, for example, is like it would have worked out to maybe like 30-40 bucks an hour is what they were presenting to me, but when I
Mhm.
actually broke it down, it was more like fucking $18 an hour because of
Yeah.
all the shit that I would have to fucking do.
Drive time, all this stuff. Yeah.
And then the way he was communicating to me before, like when we were having the initial conversation, he was presenting himself. He was peacocking, right?
Hmm.
But then when I actually started working with him, it was just like, it was very passive aggressive communication, and there was a lot of assuming, like, and I was like, bro, I'm new to to your company here, but you're expecting me to know all the ins and outs of what it is that you're doing
His
and
system.
creating this
Yeah.
in the system, and then you end up like fucking yelling at me. I'm like, whoa, bro, who the fuck are you?
Take a chill pill, bro.
And needless to say, like that job, like I did one or two jobs with the guy. I actually did three jobs with him because I was just giving them
Something's off. Yeah. Yeah.
an opportunity to change behaviors, and then just also make sure that my initial assessments were on point,
Yeah.
and giving it itself an opportunity to see whether or not that what it is I was experiencing was something that I was true. Uh, and after the third or fourth time of working with these guys, I was just like, bro, I'm not even dealing with you because your leadership style is not a. There was toxic patterns all over the place, and I was very clear that I did not want to work with anybody like that.
And that's just a small business.
And that's just a
Very
small business,
small level. Yeah.
a very small business. You know what I mean? And I actually don't even know where that, because I never see that guy out anymore.
Mm. So there you go. So what would
Mhm.
you have done to help that guy if he seeked out leadership training?
Well, one of the things is definitely just communication style. Communication style. Having more clarity uh, on on their procedures, understanding.
training manual, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's communication style, and then and then peeling back the layers of why this person is communicating the way they're communicating, and being able to point that out to that manager or that leader or whatever the case may be. Point out to them like how they're making choices, why they're making the choices that they're making, based on what it is that they're experiencing emotionally, mentally. And creating that awareness so that it doesn't leak out onto the people that they're
working
leading.
with. Yeah, got it. Where does emotional intelligence come in though? For someone who's never heard of that terminology and even what it is, emotional intelligence.
Well, I think that's part of what the work is that we get to do with Artistry in Life, is really put out in the world the language of emotional intelligence and what it is. And there's a lot of different definitions of what emotional intelligence is, but in layman's term, it's really understanding our emotions and how those emotions can influence our what we say and what we do, and how that can leak onto our the people that we're leading. I feel like emotional intelligence, again, it's almost inherent in what the title is, emotional intelligence. It's really understanding your emotions and developing intelligence around it, and peeling back layers and layers underneath what these emotions are, so you can get a better understanding of why you're acting the way you're acting.
So basically, if I'm angry and I'm yelling at one of my employees, it's like, dude, why are you angry? Or why are you yelling at me?
Yeah. The surface thing is because you're not doing what I'm fucking telling you to do.
Yeah.
It's like,
but what's the deep, where's the come on, man. How can I help you with your emotion? You're angry at me all the time. It could be that they were abused when they were a kid, or some sort of trauma in their family.
Well, not that it could be. It probably is, and it's really about doing the work and having the tools to do the work to uncover what that is, so that you can start to let go of whatever triggers or emotions that you're feeling that are choking you and not allowing you to be more in free flow and being able to become a more effective leader. You're being choked by whatever emotions or triggers or traumas that you've experienced in the past, and it's showing up in your present day. So that's part of what emotional intelligence is.
So basically, you're a great dude. You're a good dude running a company, a small company. Like you could everybody. You could read everybody as far as like their emotions every day. Like, oh, he's having a bad day, I'm gonna leave them alone. Right. So you're recognizing everybody's emotions in that day and trying to smooth everything out.
That's part of the work, yes. I mean, but really the quickest way to have effective emotional intelligence incorporated with your employees or your subordinates or people in the community that you're leading is really start to do the emotional intelligence work for yourself, because it always begins with self. When you have a better understanding of how your emotions are showing up in the ways that you're leading, whether it's with an organization or just even with family, you know what I mean? Like, we all lead each other to some capacity in our families. And if you understand how your emotions are showing up, then you set yourself up for success to be a more effective and efficient leader.
You know what came to me when you said that was the toxicity in a Filipino family, in the hierarchy of leadership.
Exactly.
Your parents,
parents, grandparents.
Yeah, they especially in a Filipino family, it's my way or the highway. I don't care if you're crying, go to the corner. I don't care if you're happy, go to the corner. You know what I mean? It's one way or it's my way or the highway, basically.
And I think that type of leadership and family may have been more applicable from back in the day, because we were coming off of World
Couple of
War,
generations
a
ago, is what
generation.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those parents are still alive, man. And you hear now that a lot of those children, they're complaining about it.
Exactly. Like that type of leadership and family may have been good for back then. That's what they grew up with. That's how they were able to survive. Like, if you don't do what I fucking say, the Japanese are gonna fucking hear us and we're gonna fucking die.
Yes.
That's literally my mom and my dad's story. You know what I mean?
Me too, man.
So,
Same thing. Yeah.
So their parents were my way or the highway or we died. That's the model that they got. So in order to survive, that's what they had to do. So our parents took that into our upbringing. It wasn't necessarily the Japanese anymore. It's just, in order to be successful in this country, it's my way or the highway. And now that type of leadership is not as effective, because you see the results of it. A lot of people in our generation, and even the millennials, because that generational pattern is still in existence, that the way of leading families is not healthy anymore. It's affecting our mental and emotional well-being. So if we don't challenge how that and let's just say too, like, there has been attempts to try to have different parenting styles. It began to move into helicopter parenting, and that's proving itself not to be as effective. But it was
tiger moms,
moms or dads, and that proved not to be as effective as it was intended to be. But at least it was an attempt to challenge the status quo of the leadership in our families. It's not working. And part of what I feel like the success of that can now transition into is having more conversations about what emotional intelligence is and why it's important.
It sounds like a lot of woo-woo stuff, man. Therapy, I gotta go to therapy. Well, how do you feel, Marking? Really tell me how you feel.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like, first of all, if you ain't on the woo-woo wagon, then go ahead and experience life the way you're going to experience it, because it's not going to be that pleasant if people continue to work in that way. Like, and on top of that, the idea of therapy is in a lot more conversation than it has been in the past. People are more like open about, oh yeah, well, my therapist said this, or this is what I got from my therapist.
I hear that a lot now.
Yeah, and I think that's great. That's broaching the topic of being able to understand how we move in the world, how we feel in the world. I think with active emotional intelligence or emotional intelligence training and coaching, like, it's helping to identify our emotions, but it's also giving you action steps to really advance, to be able to take these emotions and understand these emotions and operate from a different perspective. And operate from a perspective that can be more efficient, more energetically efficient, more energetically effective in just our ways of being. And when you are able to exercise that, the amount of relief that you get from and releasing and letting go from a lot of these emotions that can be very debilitating. Holy shit, dude. I know for yourself, and at least for myself, when I started experiencing the deeper dive into emotional intelligence and coaching and what that and implementing the tools and concepts and frameworks, when I started experiencing that, the amount of judgment that I was able to let go was a type of liberation that I feel that everybody should get to experience, because it's so much lighter. we don't realize how much our anger, our frustration, which oftentimes leads to our own depression, has such a chokehold in our ways of being, and just the weight of that. It's you don't realize how much weight that is, because we've been just carrying and piling shit on top of ourselves throughout our lives, and we just get used to it. It's like the boiling frog, right? You know what I mean?
We're not shaking any of the emotions off. We're always keeping it close to our to our belly.
Or we're sweeping it under the rug, and
yeah,
you know, after a decade, you realize, holy shit, that's a fucking mountain of shit underneath the rug that that has been occupying my mental, my emotional, my energetic ways of being, and I didn't even know that until I went through training. I went and got coaching, I did deeper dives in personal development, realized, holy shit, how much of this stuff I've been carrying and how heavy it's been. And to be able to let go of that, again, again, to me, it's one of the pillars that informs my practice, because I really feel like people get to experience that type of liberation from those emotions. And really what that boils down to is the judgment that we impose on ourselves. That judgment that we impose on ourselves, and a lot of times we don't even know that there's an imposition that's taking place that we're doing to ourselves. To be able to let go of that judgment, to me, is really what freedom feels like. And once you taste that, then it's about replicating those practices so that you can really start to let as much of that judgment go.
What does that judgment feel like? What is that emotion when you're feeling that judgment?
I mean, that judgment expresses itself in many ways. It can be, again, anger, frustration, depression, bullying, gaslighting, people pleasing. You know, those are the expressions, can be the expressions of those emotions that we're experiencing that we're sometimes not even aware of. You know what I mean? Because we lack the emotional intelligence. We lack the understanding of where these emotions are coming from, and we don't know what to do with them because we don't have tools, we don't have concepts, we don't have perspectives, we don't have frameworks to work with, and as it pertains to our emotional well-being.
Okay, let's say you get trained in emotional intelligence, and you know what it feels like. You know all the feelings, and when it comes up, you know how to deal with it. How would one deal with your parents, my parents? And you see it, but you don't know how to deal with it because you don't want to offend anybody. You definitely don't want to disrespect your parents, right?
You don't want to disrespect. Well, here's what I'll say to that: if you are practicing emotional intelligence for yourself, then there's a level of understanding and empathy that starts to become more of your practice. And the way you started to hold things before, you start to hold them differently. So if you start to hold them differently, maybe your perspective on why your parents are being the way they are, that perception, you start to loosen that perception of what it is that you're experiencing from them. So emotional intelligence allows you to hold traumas differently, where they may not have as much energetic charge on it, and so in being able to hold that differently, then energetically, like you're letting go of that judgment about that situation. So that's and in that practice too, then potentially maybe you create boundaries for yourself because you understand the power of holding boundaries.
So that's kind of like, sorry, don't interrupt, but it's kind of like if your dad said, what are you doing? You're stupid. What? You're so stupid. Why'd you do it that way? Do it this way. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, I hear leaders doing that.
Sure. And I feel like if you are in practice of emotional intelligence, part of that work can look like, okay, well, I understand why my dad is coming at me at that way, because there's something in his past, in his childhood, that's informing his ways of being. And now I can choose to take that into account or not. It's like, okay, well, I understand my dad is the way he is because that's how he thought he was able to survive and have success. So now the emotion is, now the attack is not on me personally. It's me exercising empathy and understanding, like, okay, that's his ways of being. And now I have a better understanding. And now I can start to look at it differently and hold it differently energetically, because I understand it's not an attack on me. It's more their energy that they're imposing. And I can choose from an emotionally intelligent place to take that on or not.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How do you navigate through that? How do you navigate through your feelings?
Again, it's about choice, right? Like, do I choose to take that energy on, or do I choose not to take it on?
But you know what happens usually from your parents? They're like, well, how come you're not saying anything? And then you get mad because you're not saying anything. But you're probably, if you're a critical thinker and you understand emotional intelligence, you're probably not going to say anything. You're just going to nod your head and like, okay, Dad, have we ever tried doing it this way? Or I get why you're angry. You're saying that to yourself, right? I get why my dad's angry or my mom's angry. Let's kind of just like chill a little bit. But you're not going to say that to your parents.
No, I no, because that's an avoidant conversation. I feel like if you are exercising emotional intelligence, you get to choose how you want to move forward with that. You can do it with understanding, or you can stand in your power. It's like, hey, you know what? I feel like our conversations, it's very one-sided, and here's an example how that goes. Like, hey, I hear that you're very passionate about what it is that you're offering me as far as information, and I get that is coming from a place of wanting to see me succeed, and I'm also very clear of what I get to do to become effective and efficient as in moving in my ways of being, and I am finding tools and perspectives that are more in my alignment. So I'm going to move in this direction. I respectfully ask that I ask in the most humble way that you respect that. And this is the route that I'm choosing. Now, if the parent starts coming at me, it's like, well, as a person who's deepening my understanding of emotional intelligence, I understand, like, okay, well, if you're coming at me that way, that's you. You get to own that. I don't have to take that on. Yeah. I'm choosing a different way that's more in alignment with my ways of being. I'm trying to eliminate toxic patterns and behaviors in my ways of being.
What does that look like when someone doesn't know how to operate through emotional intelligence? So let's go in the beginning of like a parent-child situation. Mm-hmm. You're just going to do what the parent says. And then like you were talking about, you're just going to pile on those emotions, sweep it under the rug, and eventually it turns into trauma, PTSD. So when you hear it or see it somewhere else when you're an adult, it causes you to go back into your hole or of depression or whatever vices you're doing, mm-hmm. to kind of cover all those traumas. Is that correct in saying that? That's what that looks like?
That's definitely a way, yeah, it can unfold for people. Yeah, for sure.
Because I honestly think that this is where it starts in the beginning when we're children. Because we're watching who we consider our parent, who's like a mentor, could be a leader in a sense of leading you to become who they think you should become. And it could be the wrong way, or it could be the right way. Who knows, right? Because you have, like, for instance, Tiger Woods' dad. You're going to play golf 24/7. You're going to love it. You're going to play it. You're going to be successful at it. And look at all the other stuff that he went through, all the traumas that he went through, and not understanding, like, well, why did my dad do it this way? Or why is he doing this? And it caused me to do that, right? It's cause and effect, basically. So that all leads into bad leaders later on in life if you think about it, if they're not being trained in how to become a better leader.
100%. And what I'll say to that is that every parent is doing the best they can, and the models that they've had were from the previous generation. That's the model that they had. So it's neither here nor there, but they're making a active choice on based off of models that they've learned, and that's where the generational patterns start to come in, is that that's how they end up raising their kids. And now I feel like it's getting to a point like, okay, that model served its purpose. Now it's time for us to evolve and start approaching leadership from a more emotional, intelligent practice. We also get to understand too, like, and this is part of emotional intelligence work, of really understanding emotions, is that we really get to recognize that as humanity is concerned, we've been operating from fear since day one. So all of our decisions, everything that we think, say, or do has been rooted in fear. And if you don't get a better understanding of that, then you set yourself up for an opportunity that you're going to miss. That's a huge component. If we understand that we're operating from a place of fear, then how do we settle that fear? How do we navigate through that fear more effectively and efficiently? How do we eliminate that fear? Is there an opportunity for us to eliminate that emotion? Or at least hold it, not eliminate it, but to hold it differently? And if we're able to hold it differently, is the way we hold it going to advance how we lead? Is it going to evolve? Is it going to revolve our own practices? You're absolutely right. Like, it does begin in the very beginning, from birth, for all of us. The way we're raised is based out of fear. Oh, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself.
Or you better go to school so you get a job so you can put food on the table and have a roof over your head. All that's fear. Yeah.
All of it is fear. All of it is fear. And if you don't, if you are able to understand it from that perspective, then maybe that informs how you make the next decision. Maybe that informs what it is that you say to your child, what it is that you say to the people that you're managing, what it is that you say to the people that you're leading.
So really it's a change. Let's say we're talking to adults now that are in leadership positions that haven't dealt with any of their issues growing up with their parents or with siblings, or, kids have trauma everywhere. Students, teachers, right? Everything from racism to whatever. If you haven't dealt with all that stuff, how do we go about retraining a leader to understand emotional intelligence, to have critical thinking, better critical thinking, so that you could be an effective leader?
I mean, part of it is getting the word out there. It's like, oh, to be an effective leader, a more effective leader, having emotional intelligence in your toolbox is going to serve you well. Oh, what's emotional intelligence?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if you don't know what emotional intelligence is and you do want to become a better leader, you better fucking start doing the homework. I feel like an effective leader doesn't stop learning. If you want to become a better leader, then search out what it means to be a better leader. And there's all the surface stuff of like looking at past leaders. That's great. That's great information. But now expand beyond that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's this cool thing, emotional intelligence. It sounds a little woo-woo, but it seems like, it's more in the conversation. Maybe I should look at it. Yeah, you should fucking look at it.
Yeah, yeah. At least look at it, right? At least look at it.
I would say at least look at it, but if all it is that you're looking, I mean, look all you want, browse all you want. But if you're not willing to buy it, again, I'm just telling you straight up, if you don't have emotional intelligence incorporated in your leadership practice, you're selling yourself short. Not only are you selling yourself short, You're selling your people short. You're selling your organization short. You're
Well,
selling community.
what do you say about all those successful leaders out there now that have never been trained in emotional intelligence?
I would ask them to define what success is. What is success? You being successful, you being driving around the fancy car, at whose expense? Are your subordinates? Are your subordinates? Are the people that you're leading? Are they happy? How many of those people did you let go so that it could advance your cause? Like, question, like, really what leadership really means to you now. For you, those people, for you who think that, oh, I'm a great leader. Well, if you think you're a great leader, that means you just stop. You stop learning. You want to become a better leader?
Yeah.
Then start looking at emotional intelligence and see how that can affect your ways of being. How that can start to release some energetic weight that maybe you didn't even know was there, and see how emotional intelligence can benefit you. And once you see that benefit, oh shit, how can this benefit the people that I'm surrounded with?
How can this benefit artists, creators, and activists? Because this, we've been talking about small business, and even, I heard a story online where he used to work with Zuckerberg from Facebook early on in the beginning, and he recognized that there was some old lady sitting next to him in his office, and he was like, "Who is that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's Zuckerberg's coach." Coach? You don't need a coach. He's running this whole freaking organization to billions of dollars. Why does he need a coach? Right? And we don't know the insights of that, what kind of coach, business coach, whatever it was, but a coach to help him lead people.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what we're talking about, correct? Yeah. Not the nuances of how she's coaching, but Zuckerberg had a coach. Right? Why would Zuckerberg need a coach? He's a great leader. But look how ineffective he was, even with a coach.
Well, I mean, I to your point, I don't know what kind of coaching that guy has gotten, but I will say that, if any leader thinks that they can do it on their own, that leader is going to fail.
Yeah. Well, my point is he had a coach.
He had a coach. Okay.
Yeah.
So the point is he had a coach.
Yeah. And so that's what you are, right? You're a coach.
I'm an emotional intelligence leadership development coach.
Correct. So whether or not that person was a certain type of coach, maybe a business coach, like coaching you how to lead people, that kind of thing, but not necessarily coaching you as an emotional intelligence leadership coach.
Mm-hmm.
But the point for me is he had a coach.
Right.
One of the richest men in the world had a business coach.
Yeah.
That's what I'm making a point about.
Yeah. I mean,
because like you said, there are people who don't think they need a coach. Why do I need a coach? Well, I'm running this organization. I'm doing well. I'm making millions of dollars.
Sure.
At the expense of others.
At the expense of others.
So I could drive my fancy car and live in a big mansion.
Yeah. And you're probably going to be living there by yourself. And if that's what you want, there you go. There you go. There you go. But I tell you what, I guarantee Michael Jordan had a coach.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee that Steph Curry had a coach.
Yep.
I guarantee Phil Jackson had a coach. I guarantee that, well, like you said, Zuckerberg had a coach. I guarantee that Tony Robbins had a coach.
Yep. Yep. Mentors, coaches. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you don't look into coaching, then it's not to say that you won't get there, but you're just going to waste a lot of time. You're going to waste a lot of time.
And it's also getting the correct coach. Like if you are dealing with issues, like you don't know how to handle your emotions as a leader. Like there are times like when I'm trying to lead people, I get frustrated when you have 10 people coming at you at the same time. and let's say it's a live event, and you got 10 different people coming at you, hey, something's wrong here, but you could get frustrated as a coach, as a leader.
100%.
And your emotions are like heightened, like, oh my God, what the heck, dude? You know, just chill out. And you're basically telling yourself to chill out because all this stuff is hitting you at the same time. And I truly believe that taking a step back and understanding what's going on and everybody's emotions, you could lead better knowing that.
100%.
Right.
But more importantly, you know, how your emotions are showing up, right? Like, you're able to understand how your emotions are coming up as you're leading folks. Like, okay, maybe I'm feeling angry because someone is challenging me. Okay, ooh, that's something that showed up in my childhood, where I felt like that kind of challenge. Have I done healing work around that? Have I been able to address that situation for myself so that I can hold it differently? And then bring it back into the present day. It's like, okay, that's where that is. Like, in the moment, I'd be like, okay, that's where the source of my emotion is coming from. Let me put that on the shelf. And in the moment, just address what's taking place, put out the fire, whatever fire I need to put out, get through that, and then go back to like, okay, I was angry because of this. Let me do the work, the necessary work, the emotional intelligence work around that, so it doesn't hold me as much anymore. So when this situation happens again, I don't get that angered emotion. Earlier, you'd asked how emotional intelligence can help artists, creatives, and activists. What's really interesting is that as artists and as creatives, and even as activists, we're very in touch with our emotions. We're very passionate with our emotions. The crux for us as artists, creatives, and activists is sometimes we just don't know what to do with those emotions or where they're necessarily coming from. So again, like, if we're able to peel back the layers of where these emotions are coming from and how they're affecting us in our day-to-day, having that information is so valuable, because now you can start to move differently in the world. You can become more effective as an artist. You can become more effective as a creator. You can become more effective as an activist, because now you have clarity of where these emotions are coming from, and it provides you more clarity in your mission statement and what it is that you want to do.
I mean, bottom line, it sounds like just understanding people and their emotions. That's emotional intelligence in a nutshell.
I'd bring it back more to, you're correct in saying that. Again, for me, I'll bring it back to really understanding for ourselves. You know what I mean? Because once you have a better understanding of how your emotions are showing up and why they're showing up the way they're showing up, and how it affects our ways of being, our choices that we make, when you have deeper understanding of what that is, there's a visceral understanding. Once you really get it, there's a visceral understanding. And when you get that visceral understanding for yourself, the empathy that you have towards others, the understanding that you have towards others, allows you to maneuver differently and make different choices of how you communicate with people. And when you have, and it goes back to what I was saying before, you know, the success and failure of any relationship is based on how well we're able to communicate with each other. That's just simple math right there. If we have shitty communication practices, we're not going to get from point A to point B very effectively.
Yeah.
But if we have great communication practices, then we can advance the cause more effectively. But more importantly, if we have healthy self-practice talks for ourselves, if we have a healthy self-talk practice, if we're able to elevate our own inner dialogue with self, when we allow ourselves to do that, we start to create a healthier relationship with self. We're no longer angry about whatever it is we were angry about in our youth. It's not showing up anymore. And we start to develop understanding and empathy for self. And when we exercise that kind of dialogue and nurture that relationship with self, when we have a healthier relationship with self, guess what? We have a healthier relationship with everything else, whether it's a person, place, or thing, because we hold things differently for ourselves. We get to show up differently for ourselves. When we show up differently for ourselves, we show up differently for others. And that's fucking liberation that's fucking dope to feel.
What do you have any examples of, like, dealing with that in a live setting, or not live setting, but in any setting for an artist, creative, and activist?
I mean, just even in my coaching practice, you know, the clients that I take on, a lot of them are artists, creatives, and activists, right? And they're finding themselves being stuck because there's some emotion that's preventing them from moving forward. Anytime some a particular event happens, when they're getting, again, a typical scenario is like someone is challenging their ways of being or their thought process or what it is that they're saying, and they can't get past that. They feel like they can't move the needle. So providing tools and understanding and a framework on how to of how that's showing up for that person, and tying it back to like, okay, this is the reason why I'm feeling this right now, is that it's a very similar feeling to something that happened in my childhood. Okay, so let's do some work. Let's visit that child, that younger version of yourself. What was that person feeling? What exactly happened? It's like, oh well, a teacher said this about me, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, is any of that true? Really? No, but it made me feel that way. Okay, so can you start to hold it differently? I'm glossing over that, but that's kind of questions that you get to, and the mechanics of what it is that you get to do, so that that person can understand where these emotions are coming from and do some somatic work or shadow work around that, so that they get to hold that differently. When they get to hold that differently for themselves as the younger version of themselves, quantum leap to present day, that they also get to hold it differently. So now when those situations happen, it's like an aha moment. Like, oh my God, that's why I get angry when people say this X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And then you
Now
piss
when
everybody off, right?
and
You
then
piss
it's a
everybody
domino
else.
effect, right?
Yeah.
So now, like, when I experience that again, it doesn't have the same effect on them. And then they can start to move forward and move past and evolve.
Why would anybody say there's no such thing as emotional intelligence?
Their own ego. They think that their way is the best way.
But
Or they just don't know. I mean, it's just not
they
on
don't
their
know.
radar. They just
Yeah.
don't know. And if they don't know, then the best that I can offer them is, you know,
I mean, it wasn't taught in class, right? It wasn't a course in college.
you know, emotional intelligence is a very new term. I think the first time it really started to show up was in the 60s and maybe even earlier than that, but it wasn't even referred to as emotional intelligence. It was referred to as social intelligence or some other thing.
Different. Yeah.
It wasn't until it started to show up in studies in the 80s, and then in the 90s, there was this guy named uh, I forget his name. Goldman. David Goldman, I think is his name. Where he started coining and using the term emotional intelligence more frequently in some books that he started to write. And you know, through this since the '90s, like it started getting on the radar, and even in the last 5 to 10 years, emotional intelligence, I think, you know, it started to get more frequency, but exponentially in these, especially in these past few years, emotional intelligence, mental and emotional well-being, that's starting to become more in the dialogue uh, in everyday scenarios. And, you know, not everybody's going to know about emotional intelligence, and that's okay. It's at the beginning stages, but
Yeah.
you know, that's part of the work that we get to do with Artistry in Life and this podcast, is just let everybody know that there is this thing called emotional intelligence. And if you don't start wrapping your head around it, uh, literally wrapping your head and your heart around it, then you're going to create a lot of resistance for yourself. You're going to experience a lot of continue to experience all these emotions that are toxic patterns. And if you really want to try to find more peace and love and joy in your life, then you really get to make that effort to understand what emotional intelligence is, so that it can help advance your cause and your ways of being. And quite honestly, dude, with the advent of AI, if we don't have, with AI coming about, if we don't start really having more conversations around emotional intelligence, EQ, EI, really understanding what that is and creating more dialogue around that, that only helps the idea of artificial intelligence, because right now artificial intelligence is not, it creates things without judgment.
Yeah.
Of using good judgment. It's just being more effective and efficient in what it is that they're doing. And that is a dangerous proposition.
Hey, some leaders operate on no emotion when you make decisions.
And I think that's there's a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
If you're in war, there's no time, because there's a lot of lives that take place. But in those times when when we don't have war, really understanding and exercising emotional intelligence and doing that vigorously with the same intensity that you are when you're leading in wartime. If you have the same type of intensity in diving into emotional intelligence, who knows? Maybe we avoid war.
Yeah.
Who knows? If we invest in emotional intelligence for our leaders and that trickles down to the subordinates, who knows? Maybe the shareholders will be even happier and richer, and everybody's fucking happier and richer.
Yeah. Or how about teach AI emotional intelligence?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, you know what I mean? I mean, that's the later year. That's the later
version. That's like 2. Or actually 5.0 or something.
Yeah, that's Terminator Part 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Where they actually know what that feels like.
Yeah.
As a intelligent being, or not even a being, right? Because it's a super computer chip. That's what it is. With
it's
data.
It's not, I'll be back. It's, I'll be back because I love you. But no, yeah, it is data, right? It's data. It's data. Trying to discover what, and that's actually a great analogy, because data was one of these aliens that lacked emotional intelligence. And as he started to uncover what emotional intelligence was for him, for it, whatever, for him, he became a better human being, a better alien.
Yeah. It is a funny story. I heard someone talk about the GPS, their GPS, and how they looked at like, whoa, if I go here, it's going to take me 55 minutes, right? And without fail, he gets there in 55 minutes from the GPS and where he's going, blah, 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 without disregarding traffic or whatever. Because, when you operate with Waze or anything like that, it actually shows you like if there's traffic and stuff like that. But you get there in 55 minutes, no matter what. He was convinced that we're living in a simulation. I know that's kind of mind-blowing thinking, right? But it's like, think about that. It still took 55 minutes even with traffic.
Right.
So how does this satellite GPS know that? Well, even with all these obstacles that are in your way, it's still going to be 55 minutes, even though it changes. Like it'll be 45 minutes to get there, and then it goes up back to 55, and sometimes it'll go to 53, and then it'll go 55, and you end up getting there at 55. I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but he said, I'm convinced that we're living in a simulation. I mean, think about that. No emotional intelligence involved, just AI.
Yeah.
Just AI. You driving your car somewhere.
Well, It's
EI, dude. EI.
EI, EQ, EI. It's crazy because again, like there's IQ, there's AI, and really to round it out, like if you really like, there's no doubt that those things have been in existence and are in existence. Now it's really about developing the EQ or the EI.
Emotions, yeah.
And if we don't start paying attention to that, then it just prolongs our own evolution. And
We're robots, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we can go into deeper conversation about how the educational system is just set up a bunch of robots.
Yeah.
And now it's biting us in the ass.
We're evolving to that.
Yeah.
Where we're not supposed to evolve into robots, but we are becoming like robots. And
all I'm really saying is that if one is just to put emotional intelligence on the radar, and really take the time and effort to understand through this podcast or through your own research, your own studies, the value of understanding what your emotional intelligence is. Because once you understand what that emotional intelligence is for you and how that shows up and how it can work to your advantage, you unplug yourself from the matrix, dude, and then we have a bunch of fucking neos running around, and that sounds like a good proposition to me. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's what it sounds like, right?
If I can stop bullets like in midair.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of the matrix, basically, right? All the ones and zeros.
100%. And what keeps us in those ones and zeros is opportunities for the matrix to cloud what our emotions really are telling us. Because really, once you understand emotional intelligence, you start to develop your own practice, you'll start to see that these emotions are not necessarily there to make you, they're there to make you feel things. But if you leave it at just that and not understand, like, ooh, some of these emotions can actually be guideposts in what I get to do next.
Yeah.
Oh my God, bro.
I mean, it's human nature to feel what we feel.
100%. It's human nature. There's a reason why.
Yeah. But some people don't know how to navigate their emotions.
Right. They lack emotional
intelligence. Yeah. Well, we could keep going back to that, but I'm just trying to bring it down to layman's terms.
No, I think it's and that's, again, that's the point. Like, we get to challenge our ways of being and see how we can, when we challenge those ways of being, the different choices that we can make in order to evolve our own ways of being as far as leaders, leading companies, leading organizations, leading communities, leading countries, leading families, like in just and interrupting our own generational patterns that don't serve us, that just hold so much anger, that hold so much dude, we're Asian, bro. Like, there's so much generational shit that we fucking carry that we're not even knowing that we're carrying. You know,
I mean, dude, not to be racist or anything, but look at the Caucasian race. Look at what they're evolving to. Right? All of this conquering and colonization, and that's Spaniards too. Right?
I mean, really,
European, Spaniards, all that stuff.
Really,
we can take this out. I'm just saying.
At the end of the day, really, it's everybody, dude.
Yeah, I don't think they had. Yeah, back then they didn't have. There was no such thing as emotional intelligence.
No, in general, like, everybody has their own generational patterns that is being passed on. I don't care if you're Chinese, Japanese, Irish, Spanish,
same. Doesn't matter.
African, Tongan, Malaysian, and whatever, dude. Each of those cultures,
the human race. Yeah, it's the human race, man.
Yeah, everybody carries on different ways of being, whether they're healthy or not. And I feel like nowadays it's more so than ever our responsibility to take a look at those practices and challenge those practices in understanding what's going to be more effective. And not that previous generations haven't been exercising, oh, well, this is more effective, but now it's incorporating the emotional intelligence component of it and really understanding what's more energetically, mentally, and emotionally healthy for us to do in order to evolve and to.
Yeah. Well, how does this look? And this in closing, and we probably already talked about it, but I mean, give me an example of like how a leader would be trained in emotional intelligence and become a better leader for whatever community or organization that they're running.
How would they, what was the question again?
How would they implement emotional intelligence into their leadership skills? Like they have a certain way of leading people. And then once you learn emotional intelligence, what does that look like when it's implemented into their system?
I mean, it could look a lot of different ways, but if you, as a leader, start incorporating emotional intelligence into your work, into your discovery of self, then it can allow you to reevaluate how you are leading others.
Yeah, I remember you talking about when you were directing a play at a college, and you were literally like, you were tired of people being late.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started docking them or charging them like $5 a minute every time they were late, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back at that, did you have emotional intelligence then, not knowing it? Or how would you have implemented emotional intelligence now to that same situation of people being late all the time?
So yeah, there was a moment in when I was helping to run a troupe of folks. We had an issue of people coming in late. my model was that I took from was that when chaos is amok, lead by fear. So I instilled fear. What that looked like was, okay, if you're going to be late, then I'm going to put a bowl in the middle of the stage, and you're going to have to put $5 in the bowl if you're late, which meant you had to walk through everybody else in order to put that $5 into the bowl.
Damn, dude, it's walk of shame, man.
It's the walk of shame. So, and that was the fear. Like, I don't want to walk through the walk of shame, so I better show up on time. Did it work? Yeah, people started showing up on time. But emotionally, everybody was like, oh, that guy's a fucking dick. Right?
You're labeled as the dick leader.
I was that hard ass. And I started feeling that, and I got to change my ways of being. And obviously hindsight is 2020, and what I did to help alleviate that was effective. But in retrospect, how I would have approached it more efficiently was to create better understanding, and develop my own understanding too, like why people are showing up late, and using that information, not excuse the late behavior, but allow it to inform how I can create a better understanding of why it's important to show up on time. And when I was able to articulate that, like why it's important for people to show up on time, then I got the same result. People started showing
without
up
the fear. Yeah, without the fear.
without using fear.
Yeah.
And people were feeling better about themselves.
How long did that take you to realize that?
It took me a couple of months. But even in that, it's just it's very interesting too, because people would see me like there's the asshole guy or there's the understanding guy. I can go either way.
Either way.
What do you guys want to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if I'm going the more understanding way and people are still showing up late, I'm gonna go back to asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, at least that's what it was presented back then. Now, like now that I have a deeper understanding of emotional intelligence, my approach and all that is different. Like how I would choose to lead is different. I definitely don't want to lead by fear anymore.
Yeah. Give me an example. How would you approach that now with knowing being trained in emotional intelligence?
One of one of the things that I would really create an environment. Well, I would definitely want to understand for the people that I'm leading why it is they're there. I would get clarity around the why. Like, why are you here? Why do you want to be a part of this organization? Why do you want to do this? And getting clarity on that, and then matching that with why the organization exists.
Mm.
When I get clear on why this organization why I'm at the helm of this organization, getting clarity of my why and understanding the why of the people that are involved, and then aligning that with the why of the mission statement, that's one of the components that I would do. The other thing that I would also do is that I would create an environment where my team felt safe. In other words, I would want them to, within parameters of that's in alignment with the mission statement of the company, the organization, I would allow them an opportunity to contribute in whatever way they thought would advance the cause, without fear of making a mistake, without fear of them losing their job.
Mm. So if I was late, I could come up to you and tell you, hey, man, my dad just died, or my mom's sick, or my dog just died.
Yeah, you know, obviously life fucking happens, and having an because when you create, if you're able to create that kind of dialogue, that kind of safety around your employees or your subordinates or community members, you start to create more buy-in to what it is that you're doing. They're not living in fear. They're, in fact, when you create that type of environment, they want to do more for the organization.
Yeah, they could be more creative.
They could be more creative because they're not afraid to take risk, because they know from that risk, at least for me, I would approach it like, all right, you failed at this task, but let's find out where the gaps were so it doesn't happen again. It's like, for me, failure is not failure if you learn from it. And if I'm able to nurture that type of environment with the people that I'm working with, bro, that to me is effective leadership.
Effective leadership and a better organization. Well-oiled machine.
Yeah, because to me, it's also just kind of simple math. If you're leading something, if you're not taking care of the people that are driving the boat, if you're not taking care of those people, then why would they take care of the boat?
Let it go. Float
Right?
away. Yeah, float away.
But if I'm providing whatever it is that I can provide within my power to make them do their job more effectively, more efficiently, and not just with their job, but just mentally and emotionally, if I'm able to add to their mental and emotional well-being in a positive way, who doesn't want to fucking work for that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in today's world, do you see an organization of, production, or, an art, whatever, that you feel is running well because of emotional intelligence?
Tony Hsieh is a perfect example. What was that? Zappos? Was that the company?
He started Zappos, yeah.
Yeah.
But we all know what happened to Tony Hsieh, right?
He passed away, right?
Yeah, they say through addiction.
I'm
They
not
found him.
sure.
They found him in a burning shack in his yard somewhere.
I'm not sure about that story. But I do know that he made his employees feel a certain way, and they loved working there.
Yeah, yeah. But it's ironic that he basically was not a happy guy when he passed away. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That might be, it's a great example of what an organization will do when he's teaching happiness,
Mhm.
trying to be, keep everybody happy. That's kind of an emotional intelligence in a certain way, but it may not be understanding why I'm happy or when I'm sad or when I'm angry, right? Because it's kind of weird the way he passed away. If you look at it, this doesn't have to be on the podcast, but I'm just saying that he basically was down. He had vices, man.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I don't know his story on his passing, but I know he instilled for his people that um, to be able to do something outside of the norm, and it proved to
yeah,
be successful
yeah.
for the people in the company.
I mean, every Friday he had like, Aloha Day or whatever day, right?
Mhm.
For the employees. And I see that prevalent now in other companies where they have like taco days and
Mhm.
come on in and, we'll do this and do that to try to keep everybody happy.
Mhm. I know a lot of these leaders, just even in the coaching industry world, that are, people love working for them.
Yeah.
Know that Joe Dispenza, uh, he leads by emotional intelligence. And when I've talked to people that have worked for him, they love working for him because he exercises that emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to a certain degree, and I don't know fully the story, but I know that people love working for Richard Branson.
Mm. Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
think I think he implemented those like Aloha days and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Not that those just one day out of the week makes everybody happy, but he probably implements that through within his organization
yeah,
for
and I'm
sure.
saying, and also what I'll say too is that even though you have emotional intelligence, doesn't mean you're perfect, because everybody is in their own process and understanding emotional intelligence, and there's a continual evolution and practice in being more emotional intelligent. It's not like just because I'm the smartest person in the world doesn't mean I'm not flawed.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
There's definitely, we're human. We make mistakes.
yeah.
That's also the misconception with coaches. Like, people look at these coaches and they think that they don't make mistakes.
They're like you're like that 24/7, right?
Yeah,
You're constantly thinking, "Whoa, what can I do better? What can I do better?"
yeah. Just even in my own story, like, there's some still triggers that come up for me that I get to, like, oh shit,
Yeah,
I gotta
you're
keep
not
people
perfect,
work
man.
on
None
me.
of us are perfect. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. Um, there's I've heard people in the coaching industry who are leading like big organizations within the industry that their whole work is about emotional intelligence. But as a leader, some people are just like, that guy's a fucking asshole.
yeah. I've actually seen a story play out on social media where she was an influencer and then became a life coach and had an organization of over 100 people from just her starting 2 years ago with just herself, and then it became overwhelming for her and she shut everything down.
Mm,
I mean, I don't know if she had anything training on leadership or emotional intelligence, but she realized she got too big too fast and didn't like it, was just
mm,
not happy
right,
because there was too much responsibility. And
right.
she wasn't doing what she first started out to do, was just help people,
Yeah,
influence people. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
So
maybe she reached a breaking point where she realized her emotional intelligence was maybe that I got to create boundaries now, and
yeah,
I got to readjust.
yeah. And not take everything on and
Yeah,
be this be all end all to everybody,
yeah,
right? As a coach, especially
yeah,
as a life coach.
Yeah, you know, again, you know, with this whole thing with emotional intelligence, it's not going to make you the perfect leader, but it'll definitely make you a better equipped leader, for sure, 100%. And dude, when you start to realize like you can operate differently and get better results, and let go of some maybe of the toxic ways of being in your leadership,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it makes everybody feel better, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why
Another
wouldn't you
thing,
want to?
yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to fucking jump on the woo woo wagon? Like, get over yourself, people. If you think shit's
Yeah.
woo woo, like,
I
if
just
you don't
heard
get
I
into woo
just
woo, then you're, you know,
I just heard the sports psychologist talk about golf. And he said basically one thing he tells his golfers that he trains is that have fun doing it.
yeah,
Fun is an emotion.
yeah.
Excitement, right? You
And the
love
key,
being there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the key is, and emotional intelligence can provide this for you is not to force that fun. Like, there are tools and perspective and frameworks that you can use to really help you create an authentic having fun.
Yeah. Well, you know, like professionals, it starts becoming a job and then they resent being there
Hmm.
because then it becomes harder for them
Hmm.
to actually win a tournament.
Yeah.
And that's a high level. I mean, I've seen it at the Masters this year with Murakami, Colin. I think it's Colin, his first name.
Hmm.
Um, he was either in the lead with Sheffield. I don't know,
Hmm.
and he fell apart. You could see his emotion. It just like came out on the course.
Hmm.
You know, which is okay. That's I mean that's sports at a high, very high level.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine what that pressure feels like.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Conor McGregor uh, was relentless in his training,
Hmm.
and there was a certain way of being, a very arrogant way of being, that he felt he had to portray in order to climb the ranks. And there was a moment where he plateaued and he couldn't understand what was happening for him. And he reached out to Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins actually coached him from an emotional intelligence perspective. And in his next fight, he fucking crushed it.
Hmm.
And one of the things that Tony Robbins was sharing was that Colin was in a happier place. He was able to manage things differently. And when he fell out of that practice, he reverted back to old patterns and old behaviors, and ended up like,
Getting knocked out twice.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I get it. Like, you know, they're these sports figures that are at the highest levels. It's not only that they're managing what they're doing on the field, but it's off the field too. Whether
Yeah.
it's at home, media, pressures of society, social media. Like,
Balance.
if
Yeah.
you don't if you don't allow yourself an opportunity to experience what emotional intelligence is, you're going to have a hard time navigating the pressures of just being an athlete at that level.
Understanding it. Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Definitely.
Cory Booker, who's a politician, I don't know. I don't know 100%, but a lot of times in some of his dialogue, it seems like he practices emotional intelligence.
He
He's been
understands.
at least
Yeah.
exposed to it,
Yeah.
so he uses that, you know, in his as much as he can in how he conducts politics, how he conducts his business at the government level. Marianne Williamson is someone who is trying to push the narrative of the value of emotional intelligence in politics. She's not having a lot of success because there is that stigma of like, oh, this fucking is way too woo.
Yeah. It's the
We have
woo new age.
How can we have this new age love shit in politics? But you know, I think it takes a lot of courage for her to just even put herself out there at that level in society. And I think even though she's not taken seriously, I think her actions are very impactful because it forces a narrative of what is this emotional intelligence stuff. So it puts that conversation on the radar even more so. And that's part of what we get to understand is that it takes time for this idea to start to become viral. It just gets to be talked about more and more. And that's part of what we get to do with Artistry and Live podcasts is really push that narrative of why emotional intelligence is so important to the betterment of humanity, the betterment of self. Like if you don't start really investing in what emotional intelligence can do for you, then you're setting yourself up for a long road of just resistance and heartache and anger and frustration and maybe depression, and maybe that depression leads to, high blood pressure or a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. I guess the other thing that people get to know too, if you start to really understand what emotional intelligence is about and how you can implement that into your life, you're only adding to the longevity of your life.
Yeah, energy. Yeah, changing your energy.
You're changing your energy.
Yep.
It's not as
woo-woo. It's too woo-woo.
Yeah. Fucking get on that woo-woo wagon.
All right, man. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Leadership quote of the day.
Leadership quote of the day. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. You playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. And it's not just meant for some of us, it's meant for all of us. And as we let our own light shine, we consciously give other people the permission to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence, our ways of being liberates others.
Woo! Gave me chills, man.
That's and that was also by Marianne Williamson.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
There you go. Right.
Coach Marking, just want to thank you for coming on the show.
Glad to be here at my own podcast. as the emotional intelligence leadership development coach. Yes, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to just, I'm glad to help. I'm glad to be helping to put emotional intelligence on the radar of other people and potential leaders, because at the end of the day, it's what we were saying before. Part of what the mission is to help people in our communities become better leaders.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you're not a good leader.
Right.
It's just we're trying to help you become a better leader.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't want to twist that to where we're saying that, hey, you're a bad leader. Let me show you how to be a better leader.
Yeah,
no.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.